Hey guys, it's Arthelamus, and it's been a while since my last FF13 themed commentary. So here I am bringing you a Longui farming video. And I promised you guys that I would whip this up a while back, and it's taken me a while to do it because I've been really busy lately. But I finally got the chance to do it, and I have to admit, it's not the most refined strategy. I only spent maybe half an hour practicing with this before, I threw together a couple of good runs and put the video together. So you can see what I do. It's pretty straightforward for those of you who are familiar with the way Longui fights usually go. I'm using Vanille as the leader, obviously, because the way I set up most of my videos is that I'm using characters with as low-leveled stats and equipment as possible. So in this case, what I'm using is a setup that does not involve tier 3 weapons, because why would you want to farm Longui in the first place? Well, you need trapezohedrons to make your tier 3 weapons. So it would be kind of self-defeating to show you how to farm Longuis with tier 3 weapons when you're doing it to get tier 3 weapons. And I'm also doing this without any dark matter equipment because I don't want to assume that you have a lot of dark matter in your inventory, and I'm using Snow and Hope as my other two characters, and it's kind of a defensive choice because I end up having the best 3 post-game healers on my team. A couple of other reasons behind using Hope. He has Infire. As you know, you need to have someone with Infire to fight Longui. And the second thing is that you don't need to magic spec him, as opposed to, let's say, Lightning or Fang, because his stats are already geared towards casting, and as a matter of fact, he doesn't have any physical Ravager skills to worry about. So, as you'll see at the end of the video, when I show the setup, I'm using Hope with a level 1 weapon and no accessories, so there you go. Otherwise, I am not going to talk too much about the strategy. It's pretty self-explanatory. Also, my strategy is, as I said, not that refined. So, there's a general procedure there. You can see that I kind of adjust as I go, but it gets the job done. And the primary concern is not with doing enough damage, even at these stats. Once the Longui falls over, it's how to take down the legs as quickly as possible while getting all your buffs up and staying healed and everything. So you can go ahead and watch the fight, and I will talk about something else that I promised to talk about, which is the onslaught of FF13-2 information that has been released as a result of this year's E3. Now, I could talk about the story or the battle system. And I'm not going to talk about the story at all because that's generally not what I'm concerned with in doing my thing, writing my guides or making my videos. I'm not here to talk about the story, I'm here to talk about the gameplay. I will say that I'm glad that Lightning is back, and I hope she's a big part of the game, playable and otherwise, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But there's plenty to talk about in terms of the gameplay that we've seen, the tidbits that Square Enix has put out. And what I'm going to do is, I have a list of gameplay elements, new or revised from the original, that I've written down, and I'm going to go through them one by one and give you my thoughts on each of them. What this isn't going to be is speculative. So I'm not going to go beyond what we absolutely know for sure, according to the trailers and the demo that we've seen. But I've gone long enough setting this up, so let's get into it. So I'm going to go through my list here. Okay, first thing is Gil after battles. So, and this is not in any particular order, by the way. This is just whatever order I've written it down as. Gil after battles, getting money after battles, as opposed to having to farm for platinum ingots, as I'm sure you're all familiar with. So I don't actually care one way or another about this, because my problem with the way it was in FF13 was not that we had to farm for hours and hours. It was the fact that we had to farm the same enemy to get money to buy components, right? That was ultimately what we wanted to do. And, you know, this could have been remedied pretty easily. Like, if you're going to make us farm, you can at least go to the trouble of making us farm different enemies. So, for example, Juggernauts dropped particle accelerators, but, you know, it was not worth it to farm Juggernauts for particle accelerators, as opposed to just farming for the ingots to buy ultra-compact reactors, you know what I mean? But had there been a way to farm ultra-compact reactors, like, let's say you had to farm one of the other missions to get N number of ultra-compact reactors, it might have been worth it, as opposed to taking your chances with, you know, the drop rates for ingots, you know, stuff like that. Or like the catalysts. When you were going for Treasure Hunter, you had to buy a lot of catalysts to upgrade all your equipment. But if you could have just farmed for them instead, I mean, it would have mixed up the post-game a little bit. So that doesn't... As you can see, I mean, it wasn't... The fact that you don't get gil directly from enemies is not the real issue with how FF13 was set up. So, yeah. That was a really long-winded way of saying, who cares? So I'm just going to move on. The cinematic action sequences, I actually like the idea. I know that everyone hates QTEs, right? I'm no exception. But the way that they've set this up, they set up the battles in FF13 and FF13-2 to be very cinematic. And I like this idea of having this, you know, pseudo-interactive cutscene to emphasize the more like dramatic parts of a battle or whatever. So I'm okay with this. I hope they don't overuse it, but I think it could be, you know, pretty cool. It could lead to some cool sequences like the one I saw in the demo where Lightning fights Chaos Bahamut or whatever. Moving right along, dialogue choices and multiple endings. Well, this kind of falls into the speculative category and the story category. So I'm going to reserve judgment on this. I don't really have an opinion as of now, so maybe when we have more information. Mog Clock and the quasi-random battles that they have. I think this is interesting. I think that, you know, it makes it more interactive in terms of what you want to do with initiating fights. But at the same time, I'm kind of wary of the fact that enemies pop up randomly, or semi-randomly, or whatever. And the main reason for this is that I'm thinking back to farming in FF13. So if you're going to make us farm, but you're also going to have random battles, I don't think those two mix very well, because if you want to farm a specific enemy in FF13, you could do it very easily. But if you're going to make us run around hoping to run into a particular type of enemy by chance, yeah, I don't like that. So that's what I think as of this moment, but obviously we'll see what happens. No TP. So if you looked at the battles in the demo, there was no TP or techniques of any kind. That could be due to the fact that at the point in the demo that they were at, you know, in the story, you don't have access to TP or techniques for whatever reason. Or they're getting rid of it completely, and I would be interested to see how they're going to compensate for that, or bring back stuff like Libra and Renew or whatever. And obviously we don't have enough information at this point. So the last and probably the biggest thing to cover is the monster system, which is apparently replacing the summon system and also affects the paradigm setups that you might be able to have. And I'm very interested in this because I think it'll bring a lot of flavor to the metagame, which, as you probably know, I was, pretty invested in FF13. So I'm looking forward to having different types of monster setups to play with, to see how you can have different ways to approach battles, different strategies to develop. Hopefully they put time into making the monsters unique and usable in their own way. I know that people are concerned about this possibly meaning that there are very few playable human characters, but it doesn't sound like that's the case. Like, I think Square Enix, or in one of the interviews, they said that there would definitely be other humans in your party. So that about covers all the major things that I wanted to touch on. I might do another one of these when we get more info, maybe near TGS or something like that. And I'm looking forward to the game, and I hope you are too. So I also hope you enjoyed this farming video. I was actually thinking that I'd put up some Uncharted 3 beta gameplay when that starts. I don't know if there's any interest in that, but I'm looking forward to that very much. And if you have any other specific requests that you'd like to see that I think might be interesting, go ahead and send them to me, and I'll think about it. So stay tuned.